Hello and welcome to Lore Master Mythbusting. Today we'll be taking a look at the common myth that Draenor, or the Outlands, possibly could be the moon of Azeroth. Where this myth began. Although I can't trace the first forum post or thread that references the idea, I can only imagine it came from the first player who bothered to look up in Supremacist Courtyard and realized they could see Azeroth, then bothered to snap a screenshot of Azeroth. I have seen speculation that Azeroth is visible from other parts of the Outlands as well, but I say speculation because I've never actually seen Azeroth from any zone other than the Black Temple. You can also see Azeroth from the temple's upper battlements when you fight Illidan. Judging by the size of Azeroth in the night sky above the Black Temple, it's easy to get the impression that Draenor is roughly the same distance from Azeroth as Earth is from the moon itself. Actually, someone once figured out the circumference of Azeroth based on the distance of yards for a spell range, then applied it over a map of Azeroth showing that the planet is significantly smaller than Earth, which would mean that Azeroth and Draenor are actually pretty close to one another, but I'm getting ahead of myself. To better understand this myth, we first need to look at what we know about Azeroth and what we know about Draenor. Here's what we know about Azeroth. We know that Azeroth has two moons, the White Lady and the Blue Child, which at times are visible in the game and WoW, but the Blue Child was removed prior to the Burning Crusade. No one ever recorded being able to see Draenor from the surface of Azeroth. Had there been a third moon in the night sky, or even visible during the day, it would drastically have altered the base religions of both the Tauren and the Night Elves, who built a great deal of their religious dogma around the moons of Azeroth. Some have speculated that Azeroth's atmosphere is too thick to see Draenor, or the Outlands now. This could be a possible answer because while the White Lady can appear fairly large and clear in the sky, the Blue Child is often hazy and hard to see. There's one problem with this assumption, and that is that it would appear that the Titans were unaware of Draenor's existence. This is highly unlikely, as you can see in most Titan technology that they clearly consider the White Lady and the Blue Child to be the only two moons of Azeroth, and this technology seems to be aware of changes taking place on Azeroth after the Titans have left, as shown as the world sundered after the creation of the Maelstrom. So it would seem if Draenor orbited Azeroth, no one, not even the Titans, seemed to know this. Now let's take a look at what we know about Draenor. We know at one time Draenor was actually a fully spherical planet, generally red in color. The orcs themselves describe the planet as being across the Great Black from Azeroth. The Great Black is a generalized term that can really best only describe the empty space between planets. So being across the Great Black from Azeroth doesn't actually rule out the possibility that Azeroth and Draenor at one time could have actually been in the same solar system. We also know that the Draenei were able to travel from the Outlands to Azeroth, and not by means of the Dark Portal, but by using the ship Exodar. And that is where we'll find the crux of our problem with this myth and why it can't be true. Exodar is a dimensional ship, and not a spaceship. Why the myth is untrue. No matter where Azeroth may have existed before the Second War, and it likely could have actually been in the same solar system as Azeroth, although I will contest that it never really was a third moon or an object orbiting Azeroth itself. And had Azeroth and Draenor been in the same solar system, they likely would not have been closer to one another than Earth and Mars. Otherwise, it probably would have affected the night-worshipping groups on Azeroth. What matters now is where the Outland exists right now. Roughly 2 years after the end of the Second War, Ner'zhul, before he became the Lich King, was opening a great deal of portals all over Draenor, the remains of which can still be seen in such zones as Zangarmarsh, the Burning Blades, and the Grand. The opening of these portals are what twisted and tore Draenor apart. After Ner'zhul fled, most of Draenor fell apart, and what we're left with now is the Outlands, being consumed by the Twisting Nether. The Twisting Nethers can be a difficult concept to understand as a WoW player, but if you can understand and accept the presence of the Emerald Dream, then you can begin to understand what the Twisting Nether is. The Twisting Nether is a dimension of chaos that exists outside the dimension in which Azeroth exists in, much like the Emerald Dream is another dimension which druids can pass into through meditation or use of portals. The Twisting Nether, the Emerald Dream, and the dimension of Azeroth all exist side by side with some influence on each other. We've seen the corruption leak from the Emerald Dream into Azeroth, and we know that most arcane magic relies on pulling from the Twisting Nether, but generally, on Azeroth, we're not able to actually see these dimensions. Why then, if the Outland exists in the Twisting Nether as described in the official World of Warcraft source material, is that we can see Azeroth from the Black Temple. To better explain this, we need to look at the most common use of the Twisting Nether in arcane magic, to make portals, from one place in the dimension of Azeroth to another. That means every time you step through a portal back to Stormwind created by a mage, you're actually temporarily passing through the Twisting Nether. The Nether is being described as much thinner in nature than the Emerald Dream, which means you can often look out into the Nether and literally see portions of other dimensions. When we look up at any part of the Outland skies and see another planet, it's safe to assume we're actually looking at a giant dimensional rift, and not an actual distance in space. Traveling through these rifts is extremely dangerous and has uncertain results, which is why the Burning Legion prefers to use specifically created portals, to travel from one point in the Twisting Nether to another point in the dimension in which Azeroth resides. So while at one time Draenor actually could have existed in the same solar system as Azeroth, it currently doesn't even exist in the same dimension any longer as Azeroth. It's supposedly true that living in the Nether can drive one mad, and yet we spend a great deal of time as players at one point or another in the Outlands. Generally, this madness-inducing area of the Nether is safe to assume that this refers more to the space between things floating in the Nether, which is very worm-like hole in property, has no respect for gravity or time. The Outland floats in that soup and is slowly being destroyed by it. So, Mythbusting. Draenor is not one of Azeroth's moons, and currently can't exist in the same solar system either. If we were to try to draw a map of Azeroth and the Outlands together, it would have to look like this, with the Outlands in the Twisted Nether plane of existence, Azeroth on its own, and the Emerald Dream existing as a third plane. Barring specific retcon from Chris Metzen or the guys at Blizzard, these are the stone cold facts of the matter. And I know, some of you will listen to what I have to say and speculate that Draenor could have actually been the Blue Child since it disappeared prior to the Burning Crusade. This can't be true because Titan globes still show the Blue Child orbiting Azeroth, and Draenor was ripped apart well before the release of World of Warcraft, which means at no time would a player have been able to look up into the night sky and seen a whole version of Draenor. The Blue Child was removed from the game because of issues it caused with the skybox, and not because it was Draenor. So that pretty much covers all the theories about how Draenor could possibly be the moon or Azeroth, or even in the same solar system. Hopefully you understand why it can't, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and look forward to the future myth-busting for World of Warcraft lore. Please stay tuned for more videos dealing with World of Warcraft lore busting.